First of all, before I start, has anyone heard of version control or have you used Git? You can just raise your hand. One, two, three, four, five. Beautiful. So, my talk is going to be about the importance of version control and best practices when using one, and I will be emphasizing on Git. So, a little about myself. I am Sophia Iroegbu. I'm a developer advocate, a technical writer, and a Python developer. Okay, what is version control? So, version control is a system that lets you save the changes to your code base over time. So, the essence or the main purpose of version control is to track your commit or track your change. Let's say you're working on a project and you implement a new login page and then you commit it or you push it to the project and you make so many other changes or so many other commits. The version control is there to ensure that you keep track of that and that you can easily revert back to your old versions or to your old changes for you as a developer to debug easily. Now, there are two types of version control. We have the centralized and the distributed version control. So the centralized version control is when all the changes, all the commits, all the merge are being pushed to one server. Then centralized is where, okay, sorry, that was centralized. Then distributed is when the changes are committed on multiple servers but can be accessed from one server. An example of a distributed version control is Git, Git that we all know and that we all use. Now, there are three popular version control systems. We have Git, we have Mercurial, and we have Subversion. But in today's setting, in today's day-to-day, you will definitely use Git. So now let's focus on Git a bit. Now, what is Git? Git was built by Linus Torvalds in 2005, and it was built after BitKeeper. That was the very first distributed version control system became a paid service. So he built this to ensure that developers like you and I can easily work on projects together. And it's like the most popular and the most used version control today. Now, this is a basic Git workflow where you have the Git init, Git add. Now, when you are using Git for the very first time, this is the workflow that you would use or you should be conversant with. The first one is Git initialize. This is when you create an empty Git, an empty repository on your laptop. The next one is Git add, where you get to add the change or you get to add the commits that you are doing. The next one is Git commits. It's like after you have added that change, you are committing that. For example, let's say you want to go and fetch water in a bucket. After you've poured the water in that bucket, that's Git add, then you taking the bucket from one place to another is the equivalent of Git commit. Another one is Git status. So this is to check the files that you have committed, the files that you have not committed, to ensure that you are committing and you are pushing the right and correct files. Next is Git remote add origin URL. This is for you to add the Git repo online, for you to add that to your laptop so that you can easily push that change that you've made from your laptop to a remote repository. Next is Git remote -v. So this is to confirm that the URL that you added initially has indeed been added. Next is git branch dash m main. This is for you to create or switch to a different branch. We'll talk about branches a bit more. Then we have git push u origin main for you to push that. Now, as a developer, how can you use Git very, very well? First of all, commit often and commit early. This is something that most developers don't do. You are working on a project and you want to wait for when you are done with everything for you to push or for you to commit that code. That should not be the case. When you work on a feature, do well to commit or do well to push that. Next one, writing meaningful commit message. Please, how many of us have, when we are trying to push our code, we don't know the commit message to add? And I see some hands. Exactly. That is one of the hardest things. Now, for you to create a meaningful commit message, the best thing for you to do is that your commit message should talk about what change you just made. You added a new user authentication. It should be this place can just be user authentication. It can be that simple, it can be that easy. Next up, use branches very well. So branch in Git is like having multiple versions of your project. And it's best for you to have two branches on your project, one for production, one for development. That way you can that way when you have an issue on your development branch, you can debug that before pushing to production. Because if you push that bug to production, you can bring down the server. Please, how many of us have actually brought down servers before? Boomy, I know you have. Then next is always sync your changes. So yes, when you work on a feature, you work on a new page, you work on a new API, ensure you sync that up. And then before you push, ensure that you pull so that you don't have any merge conflicts, because that is one of the most difficult commands, or sorry, one of the most difficult Git issues that we have. Next, use pull request wisely. What are pull requests? Pull requests is when you push your change, you push your commits to that remote repository for your teammates or people collaborating on that project for you to see. Now, this is a great way for your manager or for someone you want to take a look at that code, that they can easily review your code and give you feedback. Another one is name your branches wisely. Don't name your branches randomly, please. Another one is review before you merge. I have come across some developers that do not review or test their project before they merge. They just work on a bug fix and then they push that out. Please, that is very, very wrong, and you should be knocked for actually doing that. Another one is, okay, yes, testing before committing. Please try to test Abego before you commit your code. Now, these are the three most popular hosting services that works well with Git. We have GitHub, we have GitLab, we have Bitbucket, but GitHub is the one that is widely used by most developers today. Now, things to avoid when using Git and in general when working on a project. Number one, not using .git ignore file. This is not just an irrelevant file. This is an important file that everyone should use, because with this .git ignore file, you can ensure that you don't push unimportant files or folders. For example, if you are working on a JavaScript project, we have what we call the node modules. Now, that file or that folder should not be pushed on GitHub or should not be pushed to a repository. Adding that to your .git ignore file can ensure that you don't push that out and you don't cause significant damages to either the product or to the server. Another one is pushing large commits. Like I said earlier, Do not wait for you to finish your project before you push your changes or before you push whatever you are working on. Last but not the least, avoid pushing .env file. So yesterday, speaker talked about environment variable or .env file. While this file is very, very important, the use of this file actually is to ensure that you store your secret information in a file that only you can access, only you or your teammates can access. So pushing this, even if it's to a private repo, is very, very bad because anyone can have access to this and exploit that project or exploit that server. Now, some Git commands for you to note. We have Git rebase. Git rebase Git rebase is when you combine a sequence of commits that you've made to a new commit message. Another one is Git clone. Git clone is when you clone a remote repo from wherever it is online to your local machine. Next is Git pull. Git pull is you pulling the changes that you or someone else have made to that repository to your laptop to ensure that it is synced and updated. Next is Git merge. It's joining two branches to update both branches. Next, Git config. Git config is just to configure Git, especially when you are using it for the first time. You would be asked to configure using your username, your email, your password. Git stash is where you temporarily take the committed file, you uncommit it, and you leave it on your local machine or you leave it on your laptop. Git reset is to uncommit your change. So whatever you just committed, you can use Git reset to uncommit that file. If, let's say, you are working on a project, you face an error, you can Git reset, uncommit that, fix your issue, fix your error before you commit it again. Git log to check the history, Git checkout to create or switch between branches. Now, to sum up my talk, as a developer, you should know and understand how to use Git because you need Git in as much as you need any other programming language. And in as much as Git is not in your curriculum as a computer science student, you will definitely use it if you are working in a team, you're working on a project, or you're working on an open source tool. This is something that you definitely need to do. So remember, a well-maintained repository is a successful project. Happy committing projects, not crime. Thank you very much. All right, do we have any question?
So sometimes you might be looking for where to find the files that you will ignore. To some people, yeah, I'm using JavaScript or Python. Which files am I going to ignore by default? You can go to www.gitignore.io. Type in the language, the programming language, and it will list the default files that you can ignore. Thank you.
Thank you for that. All right, someone have a question there.
Okay, thank you for the talk.
Okay.
I want to ask, have you used Git for collaboration purpose?
Yeah.
If you have used it, can you throw light on how you used it? Whereby you are working on a file and your other colleague is also working on another file. Then later you will merge both of them together to become one file. Thank you.
All right. So Git was actually built for collaboration. Now, if you are working on a project with someone else, you would have what we call a Git repo on your GitHub, where you can add that teammates as a collaborator if it's a private repo, or you can add them, or they can fork and clone that project if it is a public repo. So what Git does is that it lets you work on function A, your teammate works on function B, and you guys can like push different commits to sort of merge your changes together. The only thing I would advise is that when working on a project, ensure that you do git pull first to pull the person's change, or for the person to pull your change before you push. If not, you would have a merge conflict that would give you so much headache and tears, to be very honest.
Any more questions?
I so I actually want to say something on the question he asked. I think what he's asking is a question more on issue of merging, right? If you've entered problem with merge before, you understand the wahala of merge, because at times you have written something on a part of your code, and your coworker has also written something on that same file, and you need to merge. So if at times merge do create a lot of issues. I think that's what he's trying to ask about.
Yes, and for that, I would not advise you and your teammates to update the same file at the same time. I would advise that you guys work on different files or different folder. That's why in a team, they don't give two developers to work on the same function or for them to work on the same feature. Instead, this person would work on login, another person work on logout. That way, it will limit and reduce having merge conflicts.
Yeah, you're correct. So I just want to add that.
Correct.
So it's possible that you work on the same file with someone else. It's actually very possible. There are situations like that that you have to, maybe you are working on something and the person just needs to add something to it. So what is just important is that whenever you make your pool, there will always be someone who is like the main owner of the repo, that's like the admin of that repo. So whenever you make that pool, you always try to look at solve the merging issues usually before you can push anything else. So if you are pushing and you didn't pull and merge before you push something else, you are going to affect whatever that person has done. I'm not arguing, I'm only adding to what she has said. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sir, someone have a question there. No, wait.
Hi, thank you for the talk. My question is, let's say I'm working with a team, I'm working with my collaborators, and I want to make use of a certain commit by my my other collaborator pushed his changes to the production, and I want to make use of just one certain commit from his branch. For example, how do I do that on my server?
I think that's where pull request comes in. With pull request, you can easily review your teammates' code. Now, on GitHub, you can add comments to a line. You can add comments to a line of a code that has a pull request. So yes, you can add comments on that, and your teammates will know that, oh, I'm supposed to change this, I'm not supposed to change that. And that's, I hope that answers your question.
Any more questions?
Any more?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Please appreciate that, please. Thank you. Thank you.